Alright, so you may have noticed that this video is kind of long. Deal with it. And not exceptionally organized. Deal with it. In addition, there are two intros. Deal with it. That's just some things you may have noticed. Why hello there, quest beasts and honorable knights alike. Shams Nelson here from Pen and Play. And in this exciting episode of Cartography Quest, we're going to be learning where to place all the biomes based on what I have to say about it. Because as I started doing a little more research for this show, realizing that I'm no climatological, ecological, biological expert, so I might be making a lot of this up. So what you're going to learn is my method for where to place all of the biomes, as we're going to call them, including mountains and forests and plains and all that stuff. So I think it's very advantageous to start with the mountains. And there are two basic ways that mountains are formed, and it's all based on like the tectonic plates. So when two tectonic plates are moving towards each other, then they're gonna do that kind of thing, and that's a mountain. But then they also might wrinkle because it's like paper. So the way that like the shockwave goes through, then you'll probably have mountain ranges running parallel to the main one where the tectonic plates are buttoning up against each other. So that's one way. And it's really, I think you should check out maps and just like look, and you'll see that a lot of times you'll see these mountain ranges. And also sometimes they'll just be like in the Himalayas, for instance. All right, I'm just going to make a new layer. They'll be like, I don't even want to do it, but it's so many going next to each other that it's just like a big old block of mountains. So you don't see that too often on fantasy maps, but I think it's an important like type of like a mountainous region is also an option to consider. And then the other way that mountains happen are when the tectonic plates are, when there's like some volcanic pressure from below and the lava is like pushing through. And so, but as the plate moves, the lava stays in the same place, the volcanic pressure, but the plate's like gliding along it. So as it pushes out, it like dots, like these are the volcanic island chains you see like Hawaii and stuff like that, where it'll be something like that. And these are probably the older ones. I don't know. Is that how that would work? And these would be the newer ones. See, I'm not going to say too much about that because I don't know. But yeah, okay. So you start off with the mountains, and obviously you could have like all sorts of stuff can happen. Like one mountain could be, if the plate's moving like this, like here's the edge of two plates, right? This plate's moving this way, and here's a third plate. So this one could like curl around, so you could have like mountains going like this, you know what I'm saying? And then there would probably be some here, and then maybe they're moving away from each other there. So there's like there could be like, oh, right here, there could be like a big like below sea level depression kind of thing. So usually like Death Valley or something, where it'll be like super hot. So these are the ways that like one way that mountains will affect the landscape. All right, but I think we're going to have a whole video on mountains, so that's enough for now. Come into this map that I've created, and I've tried to represent most of the different main biomes that you'll want to consider when creating one of your maps. All right, so one of the main things that I always think about, and this is what I was researching right before this, and I couldn't really figure out what's what. So again, this is just how I think about it, and I feel like it creates a logical consistency that even if it's not realistic to the standards of our physical universe, has enough of a consistency to feel logical within another universe, or like like this world we're creating. And in addition, it kind of like creates, like, gives you new ideas and ways of thinking of things. So the main thing I do is I'll put the mountains down. So imagine this map just with the mountains. Here, let's put a layer on top so we can make notes. All right. So we got mountains here, here. I want a more red color or something. And here. All right. So those are going to be the main, and then some hills here that might affect it a little bit. These are sand dunes. So those are going to be the main ways, things that like obstruct or change the path of the wind as it flows. Imagine like water. So here I've pointed out the direction of the wind. So we're going to start from here and imagine the wind is like water flowing across the landscape. This pass of wind will come here and it'll probably hit this and go in the least, the direction of least resistance. Actually, for this one, I should have done it blue. Yeah, I can start over with blue. I think it's worth it, you guys, to help with the metaphor or whatever this is called. So it's coming along and then it goes. All right, the next stream comes in here. It's going to come kind of up and it's going to go the same way. All right, the next one here, it has a choice to make, but this one I think is still going to go like that. This next one here is going to come, and will it come through there? Yeah, it probably would. So maybe this would be more jungly than I made it. And that's it. The rest are blocked by these mountains here. From the top, we have this here, maybe like that. We have this one here, and then this one's going to go over it. These guys coming like that. Here, this one's still going to get pushed under there. Hit those mountains like that. Now this one, oops, this one's going to come here. And oh, look how it got redirected. It might even go like that. Why not? I don't know. And, some wind is going to come like this. But basically, all this nice, and this is the wind that's bringing the warm waters to rain down their beautiful, life-giving water all over, the lands, so that the plants will grow. And so you'll see that the areas where, we can go back to red now, the areas where there's the most like compressed, and I don't know about here. I guess this is going to get wind because it's all like swirling around here. Oh yeah, you know what? That's why. Because I was like, I feel like that guy would get lots of rain. And I think the reason would be, going back to our blue, is that you get things like, whoosh, right? Some water is going to be swirling all up in there, collecting. It'll be doing like some crazy little patterns. And also this is why. Because when I imagine that when the winds hit this, it goes up. This is upwards on the z-axis, and then create clouds as it gets cooler. The watery air goes up into the clouds, it cools down, and then it rains down. So mountains in general will be getting rain. But the question is, which side? Because this is going to have some cool air. I don't know. Anyways, so I imagine that on this side, where there's more, more wind giving waters, you're going to get jungle. And here you're still going to get some, right? But also you're going to get, all this is going to rain on these mountains, and some of them are going to feed into here. And I'm imagining that there's snow on these mountains and they get rain, so they're going to melt into there. So that's why we have a main river here. But, so now let's get rid of this. On this side, or we'll just make a new one. On this side here, you probably would have lots of rivers, but I consider them smaller rivers probably. And they're going to kind of like flow in like this. So unless there's like a major river, sometimes I'll show them, but there's going to be like tons of little ones, right? Because it's all this rain coming in from everywhere and flowing down from the mountains. So it's going to look crazy like that. If you look at maps that show like all the rivers in, whatever country you're in, the United States, is the ones that I've seen. I don't know if all countries have these kind of river systems, but you'll see around like main rivers, there's like tons and tons of tiny rivers feeding into these main rivers. So if your landmass isn't that big, then they'll probably just flow right into the ocean. So that's one way. So these are ways of figuring out how to go create rivers. The main thing, we're going to talk about rivers in another one, but is that it's going to flow from high ground to low ground, so usually from the mountain to the ocean eventually. That's going to be the main path. And then, okay, so we've talked a little bit about how the rain affects where, the biomes will be. And then just to make another two other points of how the rain affects where the biomes will go is you've got over here. Oops. Yeah, we can bring that back. You've got over here and over here. So here we know that the winds, remember, they all like didn't basically get to that area, so it's going to be dry and arid, and we're going to see another example of how this can work out in the map we do together in a little bit. And then the other thing is that here, I imagine that these could be two plates that are actually pulling away from each other and creating kind of a lowland, right? And so it's going to be all marshy. It's going to be very close to sea level or even below sea level at areas. So it might be a saltwater marsh or something like that. And I forget, oh, this was created, you might recognize this map from the previous video because this was started by one of the drawings that we did. And this little lake in the middle, this whole thing, this whole area was kind of like inspired by some natural photograph. I think it was some water that spilled, but I flipped it over. So, and I added some stuff and stuff, things, of course. I wanted to point out also that rivers will have deltas. This is a really interesting delta, like the Mississippi Delta, where it's been pushing sediment out into the water and kind of creating its own landmass and then continuing to do so. But yeah, I want to save all the details for that for later stuff. So basically here we would have like kind of a plains biome where it would have some rainfall, decent amount, not enough to create a forest, because remember that most of the forest rain went up there due to the mountain patterns and the wind direction, the prevailing wind direction. Actually, I was going to show you this. Let's show you guys this. I'm sorry, this isn't the most organized, but lemonade, pen and blade, Everglade, pen and blade, heaven made, pen and blade, pen and blade. Oh, I'm just gonna do it because if I try to go crazy and make everything perfect, it's not gonna happen, you guys. So prevailing winds, I like this map because it imagine the Rocky Mountains here, and you see that these winds are going up here and these winds are going down there, so it shows how the mountains affect the wind direction. And also here where there's a lot of winds, those are the more like foresty green parts of the United States. And then here you get a little more like plains Indian lands. Where did my thing go? Here, and then you have the mountains. And then it gets like pretty dry because I think most of the moisture from here is getting blocked off and it doesn't seem like as much gets carried down. Of course, here the whole coast is very green, but then you have deserts in these areas and some forests with, I think, coniferous, where they can, like pine cones and stuff, where they can survive. Or I don't know exactly how. I saw that they were scattered throughout these pine cone forests next to the desert, and I'm like, yeah, that does happen. What's up with that? So here's another interesting map. And I was looking at this and I was like, okay, so according to this, I was kind of like testing my theory, and it kind of holds up. I was like, according to this, I don't know Australia too well. I know a lot of it is dry, but I would think that this area, because there's these two, basically when I'm looking at this, I'm seeing like where all the arrows point, that's where there are more green, like wetter areas. Here there's a lot of arrows pointing, that's the Amazon. But like down here, there's a big desert area. But on this side, where there's a little more arrows pointing, it's more jungly. And then you've got, so I was thinking like, okay, here should be more rain, here should be more dry, and then like maybe like here there'd be some stuff. I don't know. And it was kind of accurate. But basically the idea is to use the winds to inform where your rain falls so that you can decide, you know, where you want to put your biomes. All right. I think we're done talking about this map and we can start to get on to doing our own map. Let's see what we've got hither. All right, so I put this together and it's vaguely inspired by the United States. This is also from one of the maps we did with the plant in the first one. And so these are kind of representative of the Rocky Mountains. These guys here. Maybe I'll do it on a new layer just to leave this alone in case I do something crazy. And so let's have our winds. So I thought the winds would be coming like this and from the United States because this side was greener and then it was like a little more dry and the wind stops and then desert. And then, this is going to get its own moisture from that ocean. But the winds from the United States were coming from the bottom, which was interesting. So let's say we're going to have the winds coming from here. And let's just kind of play it out and see what happens. So on this layer, since we have a separate layer, let's do our wind patterns. Usually I just do this in my mind, but this could be interesting. This is the first time I've like drawn them out. All right, and then okay, so that's interesting. I feel like it would do that. And again, for me, I'm creating fantasy maps, so it doesn't matter too much. So interesting. I'm gonna feel like that's kind of gonna get the wind trapped. And then here, actually, the wind can go wherever it wants there. All right, cool. Great. And then on this side, you got winds coming in like that. Okay. So from this already, I'm getting a lot of information. I've drawn the mountains and the coastlines. On this one, I drew the coast first and then the mountains. Usually I would probably want to do the other way around because like I would consider that these mountains might be sinking into the sea here. So there should be like an island. So I could add that in. Why not? Let me add that in right now. I'm acting like I'm chiseled this in stone. And then maybe like one there because it's continuing. That's a pretty straight island chain. And here there might be something too, but it's not like I have to do it every time. And okay, let's leave it at that. Cool. So looking at this, I'm seeing that, and usually I draw in forests and stuff, but for the sake of being, faster, let's get some artistic brush. That looks foresty. This looks super foresty. All right, wow, perfect. And let's make it a multiply layer so that it fits in with the colors of our landscape more. So looking at this, I'm seeing that, I feel like there's gonna be a lot of forests here. Maybe it'll be slightly more dry in that little patch. See, it's an interesting feature. This is gonna be foresty, I'm sure. This is gonna be foresty. Probably down here too. Why not? In fact, the Southlands, one thing I like to do with my maps is to, if I don't create an island, I like to isolate them somehow. So here's like the big mountain range. But that mountain range doesn't look too foreboding, and difficult to traverse. So instead, I'm going to say that there's this great, dark, and twisted forest that none can, pass through without getting eaten. And that's why people don't travel south. So this kind of area will have its own human or humanoid like self-contained ecosystem or whatever. And I was going to talk a little bit about the placement of human biomes, settlements, but I think I'm going to save that for a whole nother video because that is a pretty big topic. But you know what, just for real funsies, real quick, let's go pop back here, since this is already quite unorganized, and talk a little bit about where I would put some human biomes, because that sounds fun. So here, I'm thinking that um, there's gonna be everyone's gonna want to be by the water, of course, right? So I'll put little dots where I want the people, and maybe I'll make it a different color so you guys can see it better. I guess it'll be little red settlements. So the people are going to want to be by the water. You know, you're thinking jungle tribes. Oops, this is a different thing. Talk about jungle tribes. You know, they might be dotted all throughout this area. And it wouldn't matter too much because the resources in a jungle are kind of like evenly distributed. So you could be closer to the water or further, or they could be right on the coast, you know, subsisting from sea life. So that area is pretty simple in my humble opinion. Then obviously by the river, you're going to have settlements. That makes perfect sense. And then this whole region is going to have all those little tiny tributary rivers probably. And this is going to be great land for farming. So you're probably going to have towns scattered like almost an even distance, which will be like what, like a 1 day horse ride or something like that. So that when you're traveling through the land, it makes sense to put a town if there's something that's 2 days away from each other. Anyways, this is getting too detailed. But if there's 2 days away from each other, someone might as well build something in the middle because it'll just be a rest stop and he'll make money on his little tavern or inn. And then people will move in around to provide other services. And that's how a little city is born. All right. And then I wouldn't put anything here, maybe, but I feel like this is going to be hotter and wet. And there's going to be snakes, all like poisonous snakes in the water. So it's like a Florida Everglade region. So you might want to put stuff like on the outskirts because there's a lot of food and resources perhaps to be found here. But you don't necessarily want to be right up in there. And then the desert, you know, I guess there's people who live in the desert, but probably more nomads. So the camps would be if there's like an oasis or something somewhere, or of course by the ocean. If there's fishing, then that's fine, and there'll be seafaring folks. This would probably be a great place because the waters would be calm to dock your boats. And you know, depending on how dangerous the forest and jungle is, you could live in there, but I don't know. I think that's enough of that. Cool. So back to our map. We've laid out the most of the forests, I think. Now, are we going to have a specifically? I like to make the forests that are more jungly a little more on the blue-green side of things. So maybe this is a more jungly forest. Let's go to the right layer. Like that, perhaps. And if anything, this would be a little bit thicker down there. Just kind of trying to get a feel for where the thickest and most hardcore forests are. Make it a little warmer. I think this will be less inhospitable. And you know, probably patches of forest here sound nice, interspersed with the plains, because the wind isn't as dense, you know, so it'll have lighter rainfall perhaps. And then maybe this would be a great plains area where it's going to get some rainfall, but mostly it's going to be drier plains. So good for, you know, there's some grasses for your livestock to graze upon. And then, so let's go ahead and put that in a, you know, brown. No, that's still too green. I want a little more orange, but I don't want it to look like a desert. There we go. That should be good. So this is kind of like your plains. And you know what? I think it's probably going to get more deserty as you get to the edge over here. Wow, it's really got a lot of color variation in this brush. I've never used this brush before. I don't really think that's conveying our desert. It's a cool brush though. Oh, because I'm on a multiply layer. Anyways, you guys know that it's a desert. This is between me and you. No one else has to know that's a desert. All right, cool. So then Let's play some rivers. I think that would be good. And but we've basically like outlined our most basic biomes. Now you can go in here and do this on a micro scale, and I think on a smaller scale, the nuances of terrain and rainfall and water flow and soil variations and all that stuff. Like you can kind of just do whatever you want. If you want a little clearing in the forest right here, just put a little clearing. If you maybe try to make it look organic by putting another clearing nearby. Um, or if you want, I don't know, like a little hill or some mountain, like whatever. Enjoy your life. All right. I think on a smaller scale, you're much more free to not have a deep logical consistency. Or you can but you could do that on the larger scale too. But I think the downside would be, excuse me, would be that your map might look a little bit contrived. I guess might be the word, like not as natural. But maybe not. So as far as rivers, let's go for rivers next. Got a nice blue color. And we're going to look at, actually, we want our wind map up. And basically, what I'm going to think of is a place where there's mountains. First off, we're going to go mountain to ocean. And how are we going to do that? Is we're going to have to decide, is this mountain range going to yield rivers this way, or both? And the answer is this way. And it makes sense that it would go to this because this would be a bay where the water's been carving away at the land. It's like kind of opposite of the sediment delta that we saw on the other map, where it was putting more sediment into the water and raising the land level. This one's like carving away because maybe there's a waterfall right there and it's just been just chipping away at the land for thousands of years, like that. Cool. And then they're always wavy. We got to talk more about rivers in another episode, but gotta remember they're wavy. They tend to be. If you have a straight river, that's probably like a fantasy. There's got to be a fantastical explanation for it if it's perfectly straight. It's quite the phenomenon. And then you're gonna have, rivers feeding into it, of course, something like that. But there'll usually be one main river or maybe two. Did I have no things? Oh, that makes sense. So maybe this is a drier area, and also there's no river there, and down here there's going to be rivers coming down like that, maybe even two or three main large ones, or perhaps all these will be tiny tiny ones, and then the large one will form like somewhere a little bit further down on the map. Here we might have a river, but to make things interesting, let's say this feels like a low area of land. What if the river ran alongside the mountain like that? It doesn't know that it should go this way. All it knows is that the land is declining at this angle. So it could get very close to the ocean right here, but not actually touch it because that's just how it is. So it's interesting to put little things like that on your map. That might look weird. Kind of doesn't look aesthetically as nice as I'd like, but I kind of like the idea. So I'm going to keep it. And then these ones, there might be like this is like the top of a hill kind of thing. So these rivers are going to go down here. This one goes off on its own, and then on this side, you'll have rivers. So if you look at it from above without that circle, let's get rid of the wind patterns. That's kind of interesting, and that is kind of sometimes how things look in real life. So the top there, maybe that's even a little tiny lake. See where that splotch doesn't connect, or these little splotches, they're like little lakes, and then they have rivers coming off. Wow. Very cool. All right. So let's do darken. That looks nicer. All right. And then, probably have a river down here. And up here, what would we do with rivers? We could still have them. Because the lake, a lot of lakes are going to empty out into the ocean as well. I don't want to have too many rivers here, but you could have one or two if you want. Maybe, imagine that this is actually like a really ancient sediment delta from this river that's been flowing here for thousands of years. It's kind of cool. Yeah, I'll put one here. Oh no, it's more dry over there, so let's leave that alone. And then I think that's it for the rivers. Then we have this side is going to be desert, we decided. So, but actually the coast, we could have some coastal, you know, tree stuff maybe. Because we said that the winds, remember, were coming up from there, I think. Yeah. Oh, look at that. That's crazy. It almost followed the exact same line. I think like myself. All right, and I think that might be it. Well, let's see. Do we want some lowlands? If we wanted some swamps, I might place them here. Where there's lakes, that means that we're getting to sea level usually. A lake, not necessarily, a lake could definitely be in the mountains. It's where it doesn't have like a lot of water's collecting in a valley type area. But this looks like it would be like a sea level lake or something like that, or it's like, there's probably rivers gonna have to flow into a lake. That's another way that rivers flow. I'm not gonna worry too much because we're almost done about the color. But this is a lake, by the way, you guys. The Black Lakes of Ternanog. Ooh, oh my goodness. Now this whole map has a pretty sinister demeanor to it. Alright, I'm actually scared. I'm heading out. That's it. That's how we end this kind of things. When we get scared, we flee. You got this, you guys. You just need confidence. That's what I should have said and made this a 1-minute video. So until next time, peace, God bless, and stay fantastic, everyone. Oh, I don't think it was recording after I clicked the screen off. It's okay. You missed nothing.